Muy buenas tardes, Europa, y muy buenos días, América. Bienvenidas y bienvenidos a esta mesa redonda organizada por FEDEPE, federación que tengo el honor de presidir, y también organizada por EWMD, organización con la que colaboramos activamente desde hace años en el ámbito del liderazgo de las mujeres en Europa. Hemos titulado esta mesa redonda Mujer y Poder, el papel fundamental de las mujeres en la recuperación económica, y estoy segura de que el debate y nuestras magníficas ponentes, a las que en breve presentaremos, van a resultar muy interesantes. Así que antes de continuar, saludo cariñosamente a Nadine, Nembach y Paola Ligabue, presidentas de EWMD, a quienes enseguida cederé la palabra, y también a Ana Nieto, periodista, vocal de la Junta Directiva de FEDEPE, que va a moderar esta mesa redonda desde Nueva York. Hoy estamos conectadas con distintas ciudades de América y Europa. Uno de los grandes retos de FEDEPE es contribuir a dinamizar el debate internacional en torno al liderazgo de las mujeres. También impulsar la paridad en los consejos de administración de las empresas a nivel global y la igualdad de oportunidades en todos los ámbitos. Las mujeres hemos hecho muchas conquistas en las últimas décadas, pero queda mucho por hacer y no nos lo están poniendo nada fácil. Primero pandemia, después crisis energética, una guerra, la inflación. Estos factores están teniendo un mayor impacto sobre las mujeres, que somos más vulnerables económica y socialmente. España sigue liderando las tasas del desempleo en la eurozona, con una tasa de paro femenino del 14,3% frente al 11% del desempleo masculino. Según datos de FEDEPE, de nuestro barómetro, más de un 57% de las mujeres cree que la situación económica actual perjudica la continuidad de las mujeres en sus puestos de trabajo. Y hace unos días, ONU Mujeres nos advertía en un informe que las mujeres tardaremos casi 3 siglos en alcanzar la igualdad. Estos datos nos tienen que llevar a la reflexión y a la acción. Empoderar económica y laboralmente a las mujeres se traduce en una sociedad más igualitaria, más próspera. No lo olvidemos. Pero bueno, no me quiero extender más. Muchísimas gracias a todos, a todas por acompañarnos. Y bueno, cedo la palabra a las presidentas de EWMD. Nadine, Paola, muy buenas tardes.
Hello. Hello, we are very happy to be here. Thanks, Anna, for your presentation. And as you see, my background is from Italy, the Vatican Church. And I'm Paola Ligabue, and I co-chair with Nadine Nembach the association EWMD International Network. Our association is almost 40 years old, 38 for the precision. And we strive to bring women closer to higher management positions and networking, creating occasions for working women to meet, share, and engage. We are in different countries in Europe and beyond. We are based in Germany, Italy, Austria, Switzerland, Lithuania, Turkey, and recently we opened a new chapter in Hong Kong. So we strongly believe in cooperation. That's why we started a few years ago to work with FEDEPE, and we found in Anna a perfect sparring partner. So I give the floor to my co-president, Nadine Nembach. Thank you, everybody, for being present with us.
Thank you, Paola. And thank you also, Anna, for the introduction. And as Paola already said, for the great work that we could do together with you with FEDEPE since 2.5, almost 3 years now. It has been a very, very fruitful cooperation. One result of this cooperation is what I quickly want to show to you. And this is what we call the Brussels Declaration. As Anna said, there's still so much to do. We have seen through the pandemic how fragile, how precarious the situation is, how long we will need to reach gender parity, to close the gender gap. And this is why, together with FEDEPE and the other cooperation partners that you can see here on the slide, 2 years ago, we decided we need to speed things up. We want to talk directly to the European Commission. We want to talk to the parliamentarians, to the ladies and gentlemen who are responsible for legislation, for financing, and so on and so on, So really to those who can make the decisions and who can accelerate the change. And this is why together as those organizations, we have drafted a position paper, a discussion basis that we will very soon show in Brussels on the 26th of October, but you can already read it on our website during the next few days. And this is why I also put the QR code here. So if you're interested, check out your mobile phone, check the QR code, and you will see a lot more details on the Brussels Declaration and also be able to read it. You are cordially invited to join us. There's a contact there as well. If you are interested, if you feel the same as we do, as FEDEPE and EWMD do, there's still a lot to do and we need to become faster. Thank you.
Hello, good morning from New York and good afternoon to the other side of the Atlantic. We are here today to debate and understand the fundamental role of women in the economic recovery. There are no shortages of crisis, and we need to bring clarity and perspective, women's perspective, to the complex current economic and social crisis. We have to be mindful that crises, as painful as they are, open opportunities, but also there are many risks to go backwards in the path already walked in equality and fairness. And without much further ado, let me introduce you to the panelists that we have today. Elena Betés, vicepresident, vice president of Red Ventures and founder of companies like Frustrator.com. Hello, welcome. Carmen Niethammer, a specialist on gender from the European Investment Bank. Good afternoon. And Kroon, responsible in Italy of the initiative Equal Pay of EWMD. Welcome to all of you. First of all, I would like to start by getting to know the perspective of each of you about the impact of the current situation is having in all the women all around the world, in the professional and business level, as well as the social level. After the pandemic, we find ourselves in an unprecedented global crisis, which is taking a toll in equality. In this regard, what are you most concerned about at this very moment? Let me start with you, Pia.
Well, most concerned about the future of the children, future of our children, impacted by the pandemic, but now as well with the global economy. What will it have? What influence will it have on our lives? The pandemic has had a large effect on women that we reduced again to caregiving, drawing the short straw when having to choose between two parents, who is going to work and who is going to take care of the children with homeschooling. So we need to see what's next on in this adventure, and it's not an easy situation, but I'm sure that together we will get through it.
Mm-hmm. Carmen, what's your take on it?
No, I think we have already heard it from our previous speakers. Obviously, the pandemic and the overall insecurities in the market and the inflation, they are impacting women typically more than men, just because women are not so not so stable necessarily financially. They have other responsibilities. The whole impact also on the care economy is one of the things that we need to still solve, particularly in the European Union. And there's all of these data that shows that indeed women feel extremely discouraged, having also made a lot of gains over the last couple of decades in terms of closing gender gaps. But indeed, the different crises that are facing us today have not made these progresses any easier. And I guess what I would like to just say that there is, however, some hope, and I hope we get into the conversation on solutions and the way forward, because there is glimmers of hope, and a lot of wonderful things are happening, including in Spain. Thanks for having invited me to the panel. I look forward to the discussion.
Sure. Elena, do you see the glimmers of hope?
I do, because I'm an optimist.
Sure.
But in reality, I think we have to first focus on the facts. And the facts is like that before pandemic, inequality was there and like hasn't been moved a lot previous years. Like, you know, so it's like we landed into a moment that we kind of stopped like into a ceiling pre-pandemic. And what happened with pandemic was really hard. Like, you know, we represent 39% of global employment, but we represent 54% of the total losses in terms of employment during the pandemic. So we had been much more strongly affected for the care that were mentioned, Carmen and Pia, but I think there is a structural factor about the sectors that we are represented that are being more affected. So I think there is several reasons why we have been more affected, and we are moving from a pandemic into a new crisis. And you know, I'm extremely concerned about how this crisis is going to impact us again. And you know, it was really scary when we hear Anna saying that we will need 300 years to aim for you know, fuel equality. But yeah. So yes, I think I'm concerned because there is still a lot to do.
And how can we avoid the new eviction of women from the labor market now due to the energy and inflationary crisis, all these crises that really you mentioned that worry you too much, Elena?
How can we solve it or put? I think there is one structural. It's like I think we need to focus on education and really try to occupy sectors that probably are not naturally ours in a sense. Science and technology, like, you know, that we, you know, I think we need to invest from the scratch. But then, you know, there are like other unstructural reasons, and I think this is like a behavior change, and responsibility is the key. But I think this is going to be all the discussion, so I don't want to kind of unveil the. But I think this it is quite fundamental. I always say the only difference between us and the rest is that we have kids, and how do we treat the maternity leave? How do we treat operational responsibility? I think that's going to be key into the future, but we can discuss forever here. But yeah, I think there's two parts of that: it's structural and operational, we'll call it.
Definitely, these structural changes are needed at both sides of the Atlantic. What differences do you see in the way that it's done in the United States or the way that it's done in Europe? Carmen, Pia?
I mean, the entrepreneurial rate, for example, in Europe for women is much lower than that in the United States. And that's quite interesting, actually, because there you don't have all of these wonderful benefits that many European women are able to benefit from due to the regulatory framework. So it's definitely also something to be said about culture. And then I would say the other piece about just looking also at the optimism part, the can-do attitude of women, I think is something that while many women probably have been discouraged, particularly because of the COVID crisis, there's also a lot of them that have actually found new ways of redefining themselves and actually doing better than before. So I think there's so many great knowledge that we also have, not just in comparison from the US and Europe. That comparison is, of course, very, very strong. But I think also when I look at other regions in the world, for example, you have Africa, right? And so the opportunities for women's entrepreneurship in Africa, one wouldn't even think that, you know, that is like, a universe, that is an enabling environment that would be particularly, positive for women's entrepreneurial development. But in fact, the entrepreneurial rate of women in Africa is quite big. And sometimes it's the challenges and the crises that help people reinvent themselves and do something differently. I think what we also don't have in the European context is, in fact, one of the data points, and probably I will come back to that over and over again, because we actually do not really understand very well the business case for investing in women. We always tend to look at, what is not working on the women's side and where we need to support women. But in fact, I think the narrative in terms of how much women can be in terms of a business opportunity, how much they're contributing also to climate change solutions, how much they contribute to innovation and technology, how much actually women entrepreneurs also contribute when it comes to women's employment. We had in one of the first slides some really discouraging data in terms of high unemployment rates in Spain, campaign for women, but in fact, women are also, women entrepreneurs are often the ones that are also then creating jobs for women. So I think there has to be a paradigm shift, that it's not just about protecting and supporting, but actually also really investing, because those returns can be better for the society, better for the business, better for the economy overall, and make places more competitive as a result. I'm just going to stop here because I know there's so much to talk about.
Changing the narrative is important, definitely. But are we women still judged more harshly than women when we are in position of responsibility, or when we are in position of managing money, investments? I mean, there is a reality, and we have heard it not so long ago, the Prime Minister of Finland having to give explanations about her own behavior in a private party. Extrapolating that act, do we have to give still more details about everything that we do in order to gather the large, harsh judgment? Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I think women are still judged more harshly in the sense that they need to prove themselves more, because in order to be credible, and that's a big thing. In terms of if you see the Prime Minister of Finland, who has recently with photographs and videos, hardly it was difficult for her to prove herself. So and I think in that perspective, women, yes, need to prove themselves more than men, unfortunately, because in case that was a male, then it would not have been such an issue, I think. And yes, women are also more judged on their aspect, and that's something that should not be done, whereas that's still the case, I think.
Elena, I think that you want to add something.
I think it's because it's all slightly related. Like, we were saying entrepreneurial, our Finland minister. I think we as women, we tend to kind of justify our positions. It is not surprising that this photos or this video went out, because she's moving Finland to the NATO. So it's like absolutely all the trolls that are possible from Russia is going to be trying to catch her. So that's not surprising. What is surprising is that her reaction is like, I know it was personal. I know it wasn't wrong. It was wrong because she didn't say it in that way, but she did a drug test. And I wonder, we always go to the next level into justify, and accepting, oh, maybe this wasn't wrong. Instead of saying, this was right, because the only way I don't get nuts is to relax during the weekend. And if I'm relaxing, it's not because I don't think that the situation in Ukraine is terrible. It's because it's the only thing to keep balance, and balance is fundamental. And I don't want to do like a drug test, because it's like, I haven't taken the drugs. You have to trust me. So it's like, and with entrepreneurs happens a bit the same. It's like we try always to prove everyone that we have the right track record. We have the right things. We almost give more explanations than needed, because we have the impression that we have to kind of prove like twice. And again, it goes again and again. It's like, you ask for money, we tend to ask for less money than men. We tend to, say, it's always, we try, I think we have been like programmed in a sense. And this will take time to change, but I think we have to be aware of it. I don't imagine any prime minister doing a drug test. I don't imagine any men doing a drug test to prove that they haven't taken drugs just because they were dancing in a party. So yeah, I think, and again, I probably will have done the same. So it's funny because I know that, I will have tried to do the same. I tried to prove everybody that this wasn't the case. But I think it opened a question mark.
If I may come in, I think there is so much that actually laws and regulation can do in terms of equaling the playing field. There's also things that infrastructure can enable to make sure that women and men have the same opportunities to access really any kinds of public services. There's so much to do also in terms of the ability of, just to make sure that everybody has the same opportunities, really, right? So that's like on the just very objective side. But then you have also situations where I think that's what I was hearing also from one of the previous comments, where we also, women also doubt themselves often. So there's this thing that we also as women need to stop doubting ourselves and just go for it, and also start shedding some of the behaviors that maybe were more appropriate in the previous generation. But of course, we are human beings, and so we're used to certain patterns and certain groups. And so I think that is really important to realize. And then there's always this unconscious bias part that I think is also important to break and learn on a daily basis. I think also sometimes for men, it becomes really complicated to be the first man in a certain group. So like the first man that decided to take paternity leave, they were kind of looked at by everybody else like, what are you doing? Are you not able to be the breadwinner in the family? And I think that is also changing, thank God, with more men having taken on more care responsibilities, and probably also having learned in the COVID crisis that actually there is so much more than just having a job and being a professional, but that everything actually comes together by just having held this moment of stillness. One of the things that I always like to point out again comes to data. When we looked at, for example, banking on women, right? For banks, financial institutions, this is one of the bread and butter items that we do in development finance organizations. And it turns out that there's a huge gap of underserved and unserved women. But then when you actually engage with the financial institutions, they perceive women to be higher risk. And because they perceive them to be higher risk, they therefore also then start asking them so many more questions, asking them to bring so many more documents, asking for husband signatures on some of the processes in some countries, etc. Only to realize that actually it is the most profitable market that they should be going after, and that they actually should speed up the process in terms of making sure that these that market segment can actually have access to accounts. And similarly, I think we're all familiar with the fact of women in leadership, right? So it's the first women on board that everybody kind of looks weirdly at, and they might actually repeat the comment that the one woman has made without giving her credit for it. 2 women in the boardroom is already like 2, but they're still being perceived as ganging up against the rest of the boardroom. And then 3 women, statistically speaking, by research, have been found to actually make the actual difference. It's tipping it, because now it's a small group and they're being taken much more seriously, even though the one woman might have made the same statement as the 3 women together. So I think there's a lot to be said about our cultural attitudes, but also about ourselves as women, self-censoring ourselves, or not being so sure about ourselves when it comes to applying for jobs, etc. The point that I like to close on just that little segment here is that is exactly why I'm so glad that I'm in a group like EWMD. You have heard our presidents just now from the international chapter, and we have power teams. So I get together every month with 3 other wonderful EWMD people that are not from my chapter in Berlin, and we just check in and we figure out what have we done incorrectly in the last month and what can we do better, and we do peer coaching, and it's absolutely amazing. So I can only encourage other women that are listening today to actually join these kind of networks.
Following up in something that you just said, Carmen, recently the Council and the European Parliament approved an initiative to promote parity in the boards of directors of listed companies. The objective is that at least 40% of the positions should be occupied by people of the underrepresented sex. So it's going to be more than 3. What is your opinion on that? Is the right step in the right direction? Either Elena, Pia.
Elena, go for it.
Yeah. It's funny because if you would have asked me like 15 years ago, I would say, no way, we don't need quotas.
Yeah.
We will do it without it. And, now, like, maybe, as you know, I'm getting more older and more wiser, and I absolutely pro quotas. I think they are needed. I think without them, we won't make it. And I think once we are sitting on the board, and I have been like sometimes being say, oh, you do an interview for a board and say, oh, you have international, digital, blah, blah, and you're a woman. It's like, but I don't mind if that's the case, but I hate when say you are a woman, that's why you're going to be sitting on the board. I'm pro quotas. I think it's quite important. I think once we are there, we realize it makes a difference, and not being the women talking in the room. So yes, I'm pro quotas. And the problem is not, and I think Carmen was absolutely right. I think there's regulation that could be made, and boards is the easy part. What kind of regulation we can push to change executive, evolution, or like on maternities and paternity leave? How can we force the paternity leave? Because that's, for me, like, it's the key. So it's like we almost have to force it. The moment you force paternity leave, co-responsibility increases, and then it changes dynamics. So I think we need to start thinking what could be regulated on other parts of our lives to help us to make it, because board has been fundamental, I would say.
In order to achieve that, we are going to need politicians, representatives that are going to say that out loud in parliaments, in councils, in governments. How far are we from that goal? Probably not in Europe, but definitely in other sides of the world. Yeah.
Well, there's still a lot to do, and Italy now. Next week we are having the elections, and as EWMD Italy, we did write a manifest which is called Parliament and Equality, aiming for equality in the Parliament, so that at least all the lists should have equally represented men and women, and that's a big thing now, and hopefully we'll have some news in the coming 10 days after the elections, and hopefully we'll have more women sitting in the Parliament in Italy in the next mandate.
Mm-hmm.
But going back on the quotas, I definitely agree with Elena. It is so important to let's say be the first woman, and then for the woman the role to ask other women and bring on board other women and support other women, because it's one step in the door, and then we can work with that. And I think we need to be better in doing that as well, is supporting other women and taking on board and presenting other women.
In an ideal world, let's say that we have 40% of the positions occupied by women, that we have a more equal representation in politics. What difference would it make in a crisis like in the very many that we are today? The fact that women would be more represented, they will have a louder voice and more action.
I don't know if this is a question directed to me, but if I may, I don't know whether you are familiar with some of the research that has come out just like in the last year, maybe 2 years. We see it over and over again also. Right now we have obviously also a climate crisis, right? But it turns out that women on boards, when you have companies with a higher share of women on boards, these companies are actually better at managing water, electricity, and greenhouse gas emissions. And it's completely very, very strong correlation. I don't know if it's a causation, but it's or causality, but it's definitely a high correlation. And that lets you to believe that actually it's not just about the business case data that we have in terms of more diverse boards also performing financially better, but when we actually can see also that the climate action part is incredibly impacted, then that is the solution. So unfortunately, I think we have to get more women into leadership to also get us out of the climate crisis, so that we get there faster in terms of climate action results. And then the last item I just wanted to say is because it's also related to climate and how women leaders might make a difference in real terms, is also the fact on the second part of that European Union directive when it comes to, or the proposal to actually start having that quota on women on boards inside the EU, because the second directive is not just to actually report on the numbers, but also to report on the process, on how companies get there in terms of promoting that board diversity. And I think we can probably learn jointly across the European Union what practices actually work. So it's about transparency when it comes to board nominations. How do you advertise for these positions? What kind of like regulations do you have by yourself in those boards? And I think that is then where that interdependency of women on boards and climate and technology and all of these other dimensions also then play very, very strongly, because women also tend to be in companies that are better managed when it comes to a governance structure. So are they there because the companies were better managed, or were they there to actually promote further better governance? That's the question. But I think it is really, really key that, and it's not just about women, it's about all parts of the society, that actually everybody has a voice and is able to actually get to the solutions, including on climate change, on what they need.
Yeah, for entrepreneurs, for the spirit of the women, the entrepreneurial spirit, there is also some change that it's needed, because not everything is going to come from the changes in listed companies or the changes in public electing positions. There is also to be said something to be said about the venture capital that is not there all the time for women, for minorities. How does what is the change that needed to be done there? Even in the United States, the amount of capital that is devoted to the entrepreneurial spirit of women is really small. How do we change that? What are the powers that we have to change that? Elena?
I think just a comment on your an idealistic world 40%. I think in an idealistic world we should be 50-50. So
I'll take that.
I think we should not aim for 40. We should aim for 50. And you know, and I have run boards where I was the chair with a 50 or a 70, and you know, and they work really well. And we have been successful in exiting several businesses. Like so, let's not stay on 40. Let's start. I think diversity is key for you know, confronting crisis, and therefore, like, you know, gender diversity is part of it, and I think we will be better. I almost want to challenge an idea, which is like we have less capital available for us, and why is that? And I would say that, you know, there are several reasons. We probably present less projects, we ask for less money, etc. But I will wonder if we are not in a wrong model. There is a lot of money on the world, and you know, you present a paper with a bullshit thing and they give you the money. Yeah. We don't tend to do that, but our way of being entrepreneurs is much more sustainable. I set up a business to have a balanced life, so I did not set up a business to sell it and, you know, became rich and, like, you know, to do triple my numbers every single day. My business plans are much more conservative because I don't think that's the right. But the truth is, like, the world need a different way to entrepreneurial spirit. And so just to challenge the overall perspective, is like, do we get less money? Yes, we get less money. But is this the right way of really building the future world? Do we want all this private equity pressing for growth of 50%? Is this sustainable? It's not sustainable. There is going to be a moment, and like, you know, I hope it's not soon, but it's probably coming. We are now going to get it, like with inflation, less money. So we are entering into crisis. It's like going to be the second Goldman Sachs. Like, you know, a lot of people have invested a lot in businesses that are supposed to be growing 50%. And this is not logic. This is not sustainable. This is not going to create the world we want. Like, you know, so for me, my perspective is we have to change the model. It's like we are asking the men to be model in a new balanced world. We need to find a different entrepreneur that cares about the world, that cares about the balance, that cares about something else. And there has to be other metrics. And if we start incorporating these other metrics, you will find out that probably women receive sufficient money for the things we are doing, and we should stop the flow of money of the things that have to grow to 100%. So I'm challenging the whole model, because if we don't challenge the whole model, we are not going to, we are just trying to behave as they are behaving. And I'm not sure if I want the money to create business that is just to be rich.
I like that perspective quite a bit, actually, Elena, because it's a little bit also like when we have this whole conversation about, women's employment participation has to be at the same level as that of men. I always think it's better to actually give people the opportunity to decide and give men the opportunity to decide whether to stay at home or work part-time or full-time. The issue becomes when then there is actually, when there's other factors that make that decision for you, right? On the access to finance front, I completely agree with you as well that it is probably partially because women have smaller financial needs, or they take them, not financially, they take smaller loans that they actually then are also better than to pay back, and that in the long term, they're more sustainable businesses. And I think it's probably right. Why always ask for too much when you can't even handle it necessarily? But the question then becomes, is it unserved or underserved? So when we actually find out what is the unemployment rate, because the unemployment rate also shows that women want to work. So then that becomes an issue. So it's not a question of are women working or not. There's women that want to work and cannot find a job. And from the women's entrepreneurial perspective, particularly also on VC and women entrepreneurs in Europe, the data seems to suggest over and over again that where the money comes from is also quite different. And so women tend to be financed much more by their own money and by that from friends and family, whereas men have more of an institutional access of money. And that was one of the downfalls, unfortunately, also for many women entrepreneurs when the COVID crisis happened, because they didn't have that larger, they had to close down their businesses much earlier in many regions of the world, because they didn't have that extra cushion, because family had given the money that they had, and so it was finished. Whereas the men that had more relationships with financial institutions, they were able to negotiate, or the financial institutions were able to benefit from government interventions. And so they were in a better place to last longer and build up different resilient plans than women, not because women were not good business managers, but just because their source of finance was from different sources. Unfortunately, we don't have that data for the European Union as much as I would hope we have it. We have it, fortunately, on VC Capital a little bit from this wonderful group VC European Women in VC. That's the organization that I encourage everybody to look up, because they're a wonderful, wonderful organization that are trying to support each other and also raise the issue on the business case for why women should be better supported when it comes to VC funding.
Do you think that if we knew, and picking up on the line that you said before, a better narrative for the case of the women, a better circumstances, do you think that we can change only if we focus a little bit more on the narrative of the successful women, on the women that even if they are not successful, they are fighting for it? Do you think that there is also a problem in the media, in that we don't tell the stories of the people that need to be in the front lines of these narratives? Yeah.
Yes. Can I reply to this? Yes, definitely. Absolutely. It's the Global Media Monitoring Project of 2020 said that only 25% of the cases women are asked for an expert opinion, which means that 75% of the times it's only the men that come forward and that get the visibility, and I think that's key to everything, because that is the role model that women play and need to play for other women, and in order for them to be sure to say, okay, yes, she can do it, I can do it as well. And that is definitely something we need to look into. Also from a media perspective, to have more expert opinions. Also, if we look at the pandemic, and there were numerous of experts or scientists, women scientists that worked on the COVID crisis, and not many of them were that much in the news, not as much as all the men were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Pia, let me follow with you. You have a project in Italy. It's called Equal Panel, which aims to ensure the equal participation of women in the panels and conferences and events. Could you explain us the keys to this initiative that you have launched, and what is the current situation in Italy in this regard?
Well, in Italy and in Europe, there's too many high-profile conferences that still lack of gender balance in terms of women representation, especially in the main panels. So it's about research says it's about 70% of the panels are male. And which means that of course the women are underrepresented. Now, the Equal Panel project from EWMD Italy has 10 guidelines to help organizations with the equality in panels in terms of conferences. So, and we are working on inviting companies, institutions, associations and public administrations to join this pact of gender equality in conferences, in panels of conferences and events, and asking also all citizens, private citizens, to support it. Equal Panel gives guidelines to organizations, starting from raising awareness. And I think that is also key to success. It's talking about it and making aware that the panel needs to be equally represented between men and women to the organization, but also commitments of organizations and companies and institutions. The organizing committee needs to be represented both by men and by women. Of course, the organization should make sure that there's women invited in the panels, but also women should have the same importance within the panel. So it should not be just the women should not be only as a presentation role, or hopefully not for bringing the coffee. So it's important to have a good level of knowledge within the panel. Also, it's important to that speakers and sponsors as well are actively that they actively inform themselves about whether there's equality in the panel, and that's because of course then it's if other speakers say that they don't want to join the panel if there's no gender equality, then it becomes more important for the organization of the event to make that. When scheduling the event, it is also important to have a balance in life, family life. So maybe don't schedule the events during the kids' holidays, so school holidays, or you can add a babysitting service, or it's possible for a woman panelist to connect, or even also a man panelist to connect with a video conference if that is easier for them, in order to work out family life as well. So why is all of this important? It's important because women act as role models for other women, and those who go on stage are give their perspective, give their view on the topics, and women have different views than men, and like this they can add to a better example, adding value to the discussion of the conference, and it's an added value for everybody. And if there's only men visible, then it seems that the women are not counted. Let's say so. The absence of women perpetuates the absence of women. EWMD, the Rome chapter, promoted the research between young Italian women of the age between 18 and 40 on public debates without gender balance. And young Italian women are definitely convinced that a greater presence of women in debates would play a decisive role in improving the perception of women in the society. Like we just said. So, and also it will have a positive influence on women, on young women in making their career choices. As the research says that 4 out of 10 women who are looking for their first employment, when faced with only male panels, think that discipline is not for them. It's not suitable for them. So EWMD with Equal Panel aims to ensure that there's an equal representation of men and women in panels and on the tables where decisions are made. In Italy, we're now working with a team of representatives in each chapter, represented in the main cities in Italy, and together with the National Committee of the founders with Fulvia Stolfi, with President from EWMD Rome, and Daniela Bandera, past President Italy, and Renate Pelati, President of Italy, and Laura Dalle, Co-President of Italy, and as well Daniela Ballarini with the EWMD Verona. Together with, we have a strong team that is developing this panel. So last but not least, everybody can subscribe as a company, association, or institution, and also as an individual. So if you want to check your phones with this leads to a form that confirms your subscription. Otherwise, if you want to know more about Equal Panel, you can always write us at the email address info@equalpanel.it. So that's another thing. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Pia. There was a recent controversy in Spain when Vice President Nadia Calviño said that she will not pose for a photograph at events where she was the only woman invited. Do you think that this type of actions can boost parity at national and international forums? What do you think, Elena?
Yes, well, it certainly makes the news, and I think it's not so much about it's about making a stand. It's about saying no, I won't be the only woman in the panel. And in Italy, we had Minister Provenzano, who in 2020 indeed cancelled his participation to a conference because it was an only male panel. So this is obviously positive news for us, and positive news for Equal Panel, and for the way forward. And the next step, I think, is that it's if you're a president or a minister, you make a big difference. If you're just, let's say, not just a woman, but if you're a woman and you say, okay, if I'm the only woman, I won't come. It can be a difficult decision. So therefore, I think women need to stand together. And like we said before, is women supporting other women and women calling other women and saying, okay, you don't have an equal panel. Well, I know other women who can join me on this panel and who are knowledgeable and who know what they speak about. So I think that's an important lesson we need to take away, is that women need to support women and bring it.
Yeah, we have a question from our audience, and here it is from Firenze. How can we change the game if we don't play the game? In Forbes' first classification, there's no woman self-made fortune if not a daughter, widow, or divorced from a rich man. Comments?
I think we have to play a different game. The point is that I don't want to gain that list, because if you gain that list without being a widow or being a daughter, that means that you have spent your life 100% working for that project, which is absolutely fine. If there's women that want to do it, or men that want to do it, welcome. Personally, I don't want to play that game, which is not, but if there is women that want to play that game, we have to let them play. I think if you analyze the new entrants to that game have been tech entrepreneurs mainly. That's why the way to play that game for the future is about technology. The entities that are growing like hell and the ones that are it's about technology. So for me, it's like, if we want to play the game, we have to understand who has entered that list lately. And lately it's about technology. And we have to go there, raise capital, and be willing to grow like 300% every month and spend our lives there. My question mark is, do we want to play that game or we want to change the game? Is there a way to use technology for sustainability? Is there a way to use technology for balance? Is there a way to build entities that so my point is, we can play their game, but there is a chance to reinvent the game. That will be my hope.
I think that unfortunately sometimes what happens is that women adopt the male style of leadership to get to the top, and that is something where we then lose this whole dimension of where we think we are different. And so that is definitely something where we need to make sure that we actually do not play that game, that we actually stay authentic to ourselves and who we are as women, possibly, if there's such a thing as a female leadership style. But I wanted to share an anecdote because it was quite funny, just to put that whole point differently. I was leading a Women on Corporate Board initiative in Sri Lanka. We had a partnership with the Colombo Stock Exchange to actually look at what the number of women in boards was across the different listed companies. And then we listed a whole directory to actually feature the women, who they are, what experience they had, how fantastic they were, so that there were no excuses when others wanted to appoint women on board, that they were more visible, right? So we were doing all of the right things. And the first comment I got from a very powerful man in Sri Lanka is like, well, look at these women. They're all there because of their family names and because they're married to somebody, they inherited something. And I turned back to him, I'm like, well, how do you think all of these men got there? They're also just sons and brothers and cousins and uncles, and they have not necessarily the right qualifications either. But at least in our directory, we were able to show that most of these women did indeed have actual credentials as to what would make them a valuable board member. But it's funny because we never hold the man to the same standard. So I think we need to also check, I don't know about this Forbes particular list, whether what is happening in the individual lives of the men. Are they actually happily married, or are they on their third marriage, or are they, close to heart attacks? I mean, I have no idea, but it would be good to actually just also check on the men and their criteria and who they are.
Most definitely. Elena, let me go with some questions for you. You are an entrepreneur, a successful woman. What advice can you give in these trying times, to all women who want to start their own business, to launch themselves into the world of entrepreneurship, which is not easy? What should women have in addition to courage to succeed in business?
I think that the advice almost will be for both genders. It's going to be difficult moments. So it's a practical one. Take care of the cash. So it's like there is, it's going to be difficult. So be quite rigorous in the way you do your projections and be conservative, because getting money is going to get more and more harder. So I think that's the first thing. I think Carmen pointed out that because we leverage on first friends and family funding, is harder, because when things get hard for the families, get hard for everyone. So I think I will force them to jump quicker into racing into institutions. I will force them, because it's like a reality check. So I will push to try harder into getting professional investors quicker in terms of women, I would say.
I pointed out the courage position, but also we have been talking here about asking and about being, a little bit more proactive in terms of being there and ask the questions, say what's your doubt, saying all of the things that men do. You are now telling us that we have to change the game, but shall we be a little bit more like men when they are after money, specifically at this moment?
We have to play the game until we change it, isn't? So yes, yeah. Of course we have to, I think let's try to retain some authenticity while doing it and be conservative still on our plans. I think the key factor, and that's again something that entrepreneurs are seeing, like successful entrepreneurs have experience on the fields. So it's like the problem is that it landed into your maternity moment if you have more chances. So I think like this co-responsibility, and we have not touched it deeply, but I think it's quite fundamental. So it's like having I always joke about it, but like your partner in life, your significant other is as important as the business plan, and having support and having responsibility and somebody willing to accept, the difficulties that we are going to go through. The process is really, really important. And having models of these supports, like having husbands, my husband has followed me to Spain, now to US, and while talking to the neighbors, like landing there, everybody assume he's the one moving the family, it's like by nature, and he has to explain, no, I'm the one at home. And so it's having these models, and again, I don't know how to do more visibility on that, but I think it's learning to play the game, be careful with the cash, get into these financial institutions, but what do you have to support you at home? How co-responsible is this person is fundamental, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very unusual to hear in panels like this, in which male are the majority, to talk about how supportive and how co-responsible you have to be within your family. So it's always just something that it's brought up with women cases. We should go into these panels and then talk about that with men. I mean, we don't want to be helped. We want to we want to be responsible with them. How do you see the future of women in the entrepreneur field? In recent years, in the case of Spain, the number of women that have started their own project has been it's growing, an upward trend that perhaps the crisis is putting at risk. And you mentioned one of the problems with cash, and probably the money is not going to be flowing as it was flowing before. What's your impression? What's going to be the outcome?
I think in general, I think the numbers will grow everywhere. And Carmen was mentioned, developing countries, even more. Why? Because we tend to be survivors. So it's like we will build small businesses to make our family survive. If there is no chances on the employment environment or this, so we tend to be entrepreneurs by need. So it's a slightly different approaches. So I think the numbers of entrepreneurial women will grow everywhere. The question is, how do we move into the next level? So how do we scale these businesses? How do we make them not just to support the family? And I think that's going to be the challenge, and that's going to be the tougher part. Is this where we have to kind of learn to raise and take risk and be more willing to take risk and be more willing to be more ambitious on projecting the numbers. I'm less conservative on what could be done by us. So I think but I'm confident on the numbers. I'm less confident on the scalability of us. And there was a study that was quite relevant on developing countries. And Carmen mentioned that we were kind of successful or same success than men on small entities, but we were not scaling, and we were were failing more when we were trying to scale in developing countries. And the equality issue there is fundamental. Like, I think they were having so many frontiers and hurdles that the men were not having on their businesses, and so many challenges that it was difficult for them to scale, and it was structural. So while in developed countries, like, it looks at, that once you manage to pass a line, you are kind of click it and they let you go, in a sense. So yeah, confident on the number, less confident on the scalability.
Scalability has always been an issue, even when the money was flowing freely in the last decade. Carmen, what do you think it's going to happen now?
I don't think we're going to do business as usual. The financial systems and financial products, as we know them, they're going to have to change and adjust quite a bit to the women's market period. And I think the women's entrepreneurship, as Elena was also saying, is also changing fundamentally. And I think it's partially because our societies are changing. So, for example, I don't have these data points for the European Union, but in the US context, you have a lot more women that decided not to get married, or that decided to be autonomously self-sufficient financially, right? And there's so much wealth. So when it comes to wealth creation, women have actually a lot of wealth in their hands, and they actually also make 80% of consumer decisions. So everybody will actually start looking at a market segment that, on top of everything else, also outlives the man, right? Because we live on average 7 years, at least in developed economies, longer than men. And then we have husbands that might also be older. So we outlive men. And so I like this whole initiative also to look at what happens after traditional careers. The Forbes 50 over 50 list, I think, is fabulous. Women are reinventing themselves. The 60 over 60 list, like there's an entrepreneurial spirit also among elderly groups, and they will have different financial needs and financial opportunities, right? Because they will not be able to make huge loans against their own lifetime going forward if they're self-employed, so to speak. So I think we will see some new products also in insurance systems, and in terms of just products that are tailored better to the women's market, not just in finance, but everything else that also speaks to women's entrepreneurship. And the fact that women also graduate in higher numbers from tertiary education institutions, that also shows that they're actually quite ready to go. So I don't think we have seen it yet. Those numbers will go up. And we'll be all remembering our conversation today. And we were like, yeah, we told you on that day, 14th of September, it was.
For that, we have to go back to the representation at the table where everything is decided, where these new financial products are designed, where decisions are taken. And one of the things that people say here, and I thought it was very funny when I heard it for the first time, if you're not at the table, you're at the menu. So, I mean, we have to be there, right? Besides the quotas, besides the push that we have to do at this very moment, when there's so many risks in the future, what should we actually do in order not to to be more adamant in supporting our needs, our future needs?
It's a wonderful question. It's like the magic wand. If you had anything that you wanted, what would it be? So I don't think I have the answer. I'm looking for inspiration.
I think nobody has the answer, but definitely what we've said before as well is we need to women need to try to let's say throw themselves into the world and take more risks and being more certain of themselves. And I think that is it's a bit there's the glass ceiling and the sticky floor. what it's an interesting thing that, you know, there is a glass ceiling above women's heads, and we're trying to break through it, but we also suffer from a sticky floor, meaning that, you know, before we jump or before we go further, there's it takes a while. So we women tend to be let's say, stick to the floor and not going up, whereas men, maybe they say, okay, we'll go for it, and even though I'm not 100% qualified for what I'm doing, I'm still going to apply for it, and I think that could be a start.
Yeah, well, I would say I will kind of split it in several pieces in a way, because I think one is regulation. You know, I think equality in Europe is much more advanced than in the US, and regulation helps. You know, protection, balance helps, and it's what it is. And I have never been pro-regulation in any of my life, but here we are. And in reality, when you look at the numbers, if you see like maternity leave here is 12 weeks unpaid. In Europe is paid and much more protected. We are forcing paternity leave here. In this environment, like paternity leave is not even an option. They go 1 week, like, you know, so it's everything. So the moment the regulator says, oh, you know, paternity leave is here for being like it's 2 months, it just opened the discussion. They may not take it for the first years, but then somebody start taking it, and then somebody. So I think we should give more power to regulation, because it changed perception and it changed behavior overall, like, you know, on the long term. So I think first is like, you know, we have to understand this is a problem and we have to act on it to change it. And then there is a second one, which is education. And education is like, we should be aware of our unconscious bias and fight them. We should be aware that we have to educate our kids in a different way. We should be aware that, you know, there are some subjects that look harder for women at the beginning for whatever reason. But in reality, it's maybe even age of development. And, you know, so let's keep pushing the ladies to learn to code. Like, you know, let's. So I think there is, for me, the second part is like education. And the third part is social, is like models. And I'm absolutely aligned with Pia. We need more expert role models for women, but we need more role models for men to know how to play in this environment. It's going to be more equality. So I think there is three areas, like, you know, one is short-term regulation, the other is super long-term education, and the other is like what we are playing now. Like, you know, we are here talking to kind of inspire others, and you know, we always say yes. If they call me for something that is related with equality, you know, you get there, you talk, you give example, you put your model, you build companies that balance. So, and this is what we are living. It is sufficient? Probably it's not. But, you know, this is what we have to be doing. Protect other women, like your PSA, like, you know, say in the panel, there is other experts. I know this one. So help each other. I think it's quite fundamental.
And now that I've had a chance to reflect, if I may come in, because I should not leave this panel without actually making a big pitch for gender lens investments and ESG investments, because as I said earlier, women, a lot of us have a lot of capital, or even anything that we purchase in the market. If we can be more conscious consumers and knowing where these products are being produced, how they're produced, if these companies that we're buying from have a gender policy, if they're also, you know, adhering voluntarily or mandatorily to some of the ESG standards, that would be absolutely incredibly a game changer. I want to maybe share with the panel and the audience that there's an amazing taxonomy. You probably all are familiar with the green economy taxonomy, right? So that has been like a forerunner, and it's just recently that the social taxonomy for inside the EU was also being approved in terms of social investments, and how can how can we call investments to be sustainable, so to speak, on a social side. But there's one taxonomy that's a gender lens taxonomy. It's called the 2X criteria, and that has now been applied for 3 years. And it actually looks at the whole spectrum of investments. When you make an investment, it is does a company have women in leadership? What about their employment numbers? What about their entrepreneurship numbers when it comes to either financing them or sourcing from them? What about other gender actions that they take? And there is an incredibly new field where actually financial institutions, not just commercial banks, but also now pension funds and multilateral development banks, and everybody is actually stepping up to ensure that we are following these kind of investments. And I think that could actually be a game changer, because then we are actually financing what we believe in. And then there's, of course, other criteria that one could take into consideration as part of the ESG investment community. But on the gender side, that is one that's very visible and measurable. And I think we will be able to show some impact numbers in the next years to come. It was actually, by the way, an initiative launched by the G7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have two questions related to these answers. First, talking about education and you mentioned before, Elena, that technology is the field where the growth is coming from. So STEM careers and women in STEM. In a report in the European Parliament, it was concluded that we are facing an unprecedented shortage of women in this field. 28% of women in the university's careers, 12% in artificial intelligence, and how important it is to have women in artificial intelligence and have the women bias there, and 20% in cybersecurity. What are we doing wrong?
I don't know, but we are doing something wrong. So I don't know, but the point is that, and I think that tech doesn't look attractive. It's always built and thought like, and I have that issue at home because I have a 12-year-old lady and a 15-year-old boy. None of them are attracted by technology, no. So I have the issue multiply by 2. But it's like it's really, I don't think we make it attractive, or I don't know how to solve it, because if I could not solve it in microeconomy, how I'm going to solve it in macro. But it's true that there is several initiatives called .org, and there are several initiatives that are making it more adaptable, even to genders. So it's like what they do is like they let the kids and the girls to program things that are more, interesting for them, instead of forcing them to play with like small balls how they hit so it's like there's ways to make it more attractive. I haven't solved it. I will love to solve it. I think it has something to do with like the age that we are trying to push them into that careers. I think there has to be like, I always joke, but like, my daughter was speaking like much better than my boy, like for ages, but he was always better at math, speaking less. But it's like, I'm convinced that they all will land it to the same level. It's just that they have different momentums of this. So it's clearly, can we identify what is the right moment to promote STEM careers with the girls and to push them into that direction? Are we doing it right? Probably not. Like, probably we are doing that in the age that is more men-oriented or whatever. So we are clearly not doing right. And the fact that there is a limited number of resources make it less attractive, because then you see the surveys and they say, look, I didn't feel good being in a class with 2 or 3 girls, and the rest of, I don't feel part of it. I didn't belong there. So it's like, I think it's a problem that gets worse and worse the more we move. And I don't have the solution. If I would have it, I would be like the most happy women. Because I think it's fundamental, but I haven't landed.
My last question for you directly, Carmen. We all agree that our companies and our society needs talent, and that women represent no less than 50% of this potential. So let's continue to prevent the full incorporation of female talent into the pool.
Maybe I just close with the power of the private sector again. I don't know if that is the best answer, But I think also linked to just the question that you asked earlier on STEM, the private sector, if they produce also like artificial intelligence systems without the perspective of women in the design, or having tested it on women, or making sure that there is no gender bias in AI, then their products are going to be bad, and then they cannot land it, and so it's not going to be financially sustainable and successful. So I think even in an area like that, it will make a lot of sense for the private sector to actually make sure that women have more opportunities, and they will at the end of the day also pressure the legislation to come in so that there is an equal level playing field, including through infrastructure, including through public services, including through benefits and care systems. And I think that will be the game changer, while at the same time us women continuing doing what we're doing. But I think with the business case for all of these different areas, and for governments to realize that they have to enable it better, it will happen. And so I look forward to seeing that day.
Sure. And we are like 10 minutes away from finishing our meeting, and I would like to ask you a final question for the three of you. It's a little bit of, we need imagination, but we also need goodwill, and I would like to have your take on this one. How do you see the future of women in the coming years? Will the last crisis pass us by, or will we achieve parity, the representation of companies and organizations, and the salary gap, and achieve co-responsibility, all that we have demanded for so many decades? Do you think that this crisis is going to open an opportunity? Do you think that it's something within reach for the next decades? Pia, let's start with you, please.
Well, I think we did, and there's a long way to go. We have a long way to go. I read somewhere it was 132 years, but earlier on, Anna said it was 300 years. So we still have a long way to go, but we must not stop. We must not stop working on promoting women, and that is, there's going to be every little step we make now, it will be for our children and our children's children and the future generations. So we now see, all of what our mothers have done in let's say the 70s, and now it's our turn to make our point, and going forward, hopefully we'll be able to create a better world for our children. And there is always a bright side, I think, on everything. It's going to be hard, but we must not stop, and we must not be discouraged about current crises. But we need to continue what we do, and keep our voices loud, let's say, and continue to do our jobs.
Thank you. Carmen, if you're ready.
I think I have spoken to that point earlier. I think really crises have shed some of the societal issues, made them much more visible, and it is an opportunity for everybody to come together. And I do believe that indeed women have, in particularly women, have shown that they can come out of a crisis stronger, better, as many men. And I think it will, I think the past crisis and the crisis to come, when it comes to food crisis, when it comes to energy crisis, when it comes to pandemics and health issues, it just has shown us that actually the globe is a village, the world is a village. And so we need to continuously stress that our actions have consequences every single day. And I think that we'll just up our game to make sure that we do a good deed every day. And I truly believe in that. And we cannot solve everything, but if everybody does the little tiny thing every single day, the world will be a better place, and it will massify. So I think I leave it there. And I think, there will be much more support for disenfranchised group. And I hope.
With that good hope, we stay. Thank you very much, Elena.
So I start saying I'm an optimist. Optimist means like I see the reality, but I'm confident about the future. So I think reality is that we have to keep fighting, and that's something we cannot change. We should keep fighting for improving equality. But I'm a positive because I think the crisis we are confronting now is a crisis on natural resources, on climate. And I think our voice is going to be extremely relevant. And I think we really are long-term thinkers. And I personally believe that we are going to make the difference. And we are going to be making the difference in a world that is much more data-driven. And the moment we start taking information, and Carmen was saying, the boards that are having women, the moment we start connecting the dots, we will land it and we will conclude that this is obvious. And I'm hoping that, soon we will see it's obvious. It is obvious, and it's obvious in so many times that so I think we will keep staking our space. I think our previous generations did a huge effort, and I think we are getting there. And we just have to keep moving, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. Let me recap some of the things that we have heard here. I've been taking some notes, not very many, I'm sorry, but we have heard here about the sectors that are more affected by the role of women. We have to work more on these sectors. We have to encourage women to go into the STEM education in order to go to the technology sector. That is the one that is growing. We have to focus on education. We have to focus also in representation. We have to be at the tables where everything is decided, and we have to change the structural the structural society. We don't have to be measured by the same way that men are measured, and we have to make those changes. Women tend to justify its positions, we have heard here, and law and regulation still can do a lot. We have to work on that. We have to make sure that we don't lower our guard there, and we'll keep on going with changes here at the other side of the Atlantic, at the other side of every ocean. We like the new changes for listed companies, and we welcome changes also in the private sectors in order to improve the representation of women. And definitely the world at this stake needs the entrepreneurial spirit of women. We cannot achieve a growth of 50% as companies that are ruled by men now, that have the ear of the investors for good or for bad reasons. And we have to make ourselves heard in the private equity world as well. We have to play a different game, and we have to change that game. And representation. This is something that it has been repeatedly said in this conversation. And then I appreciate all of you, Elena Betés, Carmen Niethammer, Kroon, for your words and for your wisdom in this meeting. And I also have to thank FEDEPE for organizing once more one of these very interesting panels in which we come together to share initiatives, thoughts, and steps for the future. We have to keep on walking. Thank you, FEDEPE. Thank you, Ana Bujaldón. And thank you also to EWMD for bringing us your support and your plans and your work together. And to everybody in the audience, stay tuned. We will be back for more debates and for more words and for more encouraging plans for the future of women and therefore for everybody.
Amazing summary. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.